Shalom, Izzy here with Holy Language Institute at holylanguage.com, and welcome to this four-part little series kicking off our new lesson series, Mishnah Snapshots. In these first four lessons, I'm going to be giving you an introduction to the Mishnah. And in part one here of these four little discussions, we are going to be talking about the questions of what is the Mishnah and what does Mishnah mean anyway. Obviously, Mishnah isn't an English word, it's actually a Hebrew word, and it does have a meaning in the Hebrew language. And you may actually be surprised to learn that Mishnah does not literally mean oral law. So, the Mishnah. Surrounded by urban legends, everyone seems to have an opinion about it, but from my observations, few have actually read it. And throughout these little discussions, I'm going to be showing you lots of pictures of the Mishnah. Ancient manuscripts, modern editions. So if you enjoy books with pictures, you are going to enjoy these discussions. And if you hate books with pictures, I hope you can just bear with us here. For those of us who are a little more visually oriented, Jesus kept the Mishnah as it existed in his time. The Romans outlawed it. The Talmud is commentary on it, and Judaism today is based on it. And here's a picture of the Mishnah with some diagrams and whatnot. So the Mishnah and the New Testament, they come from the same Jewish world, and they actually have more in common than you would think. Remember that, the Mishnah and the New Testament. So, welcome. Welcome to my new series, Mishnah Snapshots, looking specifically at how the Mishnah sheds light on the New Testament. Remembering, of course, that they're both sets of writings from the same Jewish world. These startlingly personal glimpses of Yeshua of Nazareth through the lens of ancient Jewish law won't just give you a new perspective on the Bible. They'll make your relationship with Yeshua and with his Jewish people better than ever, almost as if he was taking a selfie. Which of these do you think, a more historically accurate picture of Yeshua, by the way? My guess would actually be not this one maybe so much as this one. And that's what the Mishnah is all about in terms of our approach to it. Coming to see Yeshua, the Jewish rabbi, better. If you like explosions, you're going to love these lessons because we are going to be blowing urban legends out of the water at every turn. So sit down and pay attention because this. And I actually am not fond of gender stereotypes and the whole real men da-da-da-da-da, but it's just a great picture. And sit down and definitely be this guy. Let's watch some urban legends being blown right out of the water. Kind of like these kind of demolitions going on. Before we start looking at specific intersections between the Mishnah and the New Testament, I'm going to take these four lessons to talk about what the Mishnah is all about. So firstly, what exactly is the Mishnah, and what does the word Mishnah mean anyway? We're going to talk about that in this discussion. Secondly, how is the Mishnah developed and why? And thirdly, isn't Mishnah oral law or something? This isn't about dental hygiene, is it? And the answer is no. It has nothing to do with dental hygiene, but that's not going to stop me from sharing with you right now a couple humorous memes about dental hygiene. I mentioned that I'm going to be including visuals in these lessons, and I also like to include cultural elements and a note of humor. It's okay if I laugh, right? So finally, we're also going to be talking about what did Yeshua think about the Mishnah, and how does that affect us. So, what is the Mishnah? Essentially, the Mishnah is the earliest historical record of how the Jewish people interpreted and applied the Torah. Much of the Mishnah is case law. A legal question is raised, differing opinions are noted, and finally a majority decision is reached by the sages. Sometimes a precedent is also listed, either the specific situation prompting the question or a case illustrating it. This is called a ma'aseh. It's from the verb asah, to act or do. The plural of ma'aseh is ma'asim. So precedents would be referred to as ma'asim. A single precedent, as we can see here, either the specific situation that prompted the question or a case illustrating it, that single precedent is going to be referred to as a ma'aseh. And I definitely get a gold star for managing to slip a Chuck Norris joke into this lesson series. As a side note, this gives us a fuller understanding of the Acts of the Apostles, which in Hebrew is called the Ma'aseh ha-shlichim, the Ma'asim of the shaliachs. And of course, remember that that word there, Ma'asim, is the word in the Mishnah for legal precedents, for specific cases. Either the situation that prompted it originally or an example. Now, notably, the book of Acts does contain several precedents, ma'asim, and legal decisions arrived at by the sages, that's the apostles, of the early Messianic community. So maybe even understanding the concept of ma'asim in Jewish law and in the Mishnah helps you to better understand the function of the book of the Acts of the Apostles. It's the ma'asim of the apostles, the shlichim. Now, the Mishnah itself is divided up into 6 orders and 63 tractates, which are further divided into 525 chapters and 4,224 verses. And no, you don't need to memorize that. Don't worry. Would you like to learn the Hebrew words for these various divisions? Here they are. An order is called a seder, plural sedarim. You may be familiar with this from the Passover Seder. A tractate is a masechta. The plural of masechta is masechtot. And there is another form of this word that's used, and I'm going to show that to you actually in just a second. But for now, suffice it to say that a tractate is a masechta. A chapter is a perek, and you'll notice here that I didn't say perek. In Hebrew, if you have the double eh sound, like in perek, then the accent is actually on the first syllable. Usually the accent is on the last syllable, but in this case it's on the first. Another example would be Sabbath evening in Hebrew is called Erev Shabbat. It's not called Erev Shabbat, it's Erev Shabbat. Okay, so a chapter is a perek, and then the plural is prakim. And a verse, finally, is a Mishnah. So there's that word Mishnah. A verse is actually a Mishnah, and the plural is Mishnayot. A verse is also called a halacha. The plural of that is halachot. And this word halacha, it's a big word. It comes from the Hebrew verb halach, which means to walk. And it's also the word in Jewish law for Jewish law. So a halacha is like it's a law. It's a law about how to walk out the word of God in your own walk, so to speak. And I'll show you something here. So this is a page from, and you'll see here it says Masechet Sukkah. All right. So this is the tractate about the festival of Sukkot and about how to build a sukkah. And you'll notice here that it doesn't actually say masechta. Remember, I showed you here a tractate is a masechta. So why does it say masechet? That's called the construct form. So if you want to say a masechta of, the tractate of sukkah, then you say masechet. That means tractate of or masechta of. And I'll actually show you here one of the seders, one of the orders or books of the Mishnah. This is the one that I am going to be working off in these lessons. It's an older version, and it smells like an old book. And I love old books. I love the smell of old books. So that's a very pleasing thing to me. And I'll show you the opening page in the very first Masechta. Okay, so you can see here it says Masechet. I know this isn't super clear, but hopefully you can see it sufficiently anyway. It says Masechet Brachot. Right? So Masechet again means Masechta of, tractate of. And then the very first tractate in the Mishnah is about brachot. It's about blessings. It's about Jewish prayer. And you can see here it talks about the Shema, when to say the Shema, some differing opinions, and a conversation there. So basically, one way of looking at the Mishnah is it's this long conversation between the Jewish sages. Roughly, how long shall we say? About a 500 year long conversation between the Jewish sages, spanning most of the Second Temple era, and then running after that for about another 100 years. We'll talk more about the dates and whatnot in a little bit. But that's the book that we're going to be working off in this lesson series, and you can actually get it in PDF form on our website. Go to holylanguage.com, and in the recommended resources page, you will see a download, and you can get that entire version of the Mishnah in Hebrew and English with notes from that page. And then you can follow along for yourself. Throughout the Mishnah, this may surprise you, a distinction is made between the written Torah and the oral Torah. Surprise! Now, the written Torah is referred to as the Torah shebichtav. And you know the word Torah, it's like the law of God, his teachings and instructions. There are actually two prefixes on this word. She is short for asher, which means which is. Be here is the prefix for in, and then katav, and that means the verb katav means to write. So here this has the sense of the Torah, which is in writing, the Torah shebichtav. Rulings which come directly from the Torah are called me de oraita in Aramaic, and min haTorah in Hebrew, both of which mean from the Torah. In fact, you can see the similarity here. So in the Aramaic, the Torah is referred to as the Oraita, and then in Hebrew, of course, it's the Torah. From in Aramaic is me, whereas in Hebrew it's min, and then da in Aramaic means the. And actually, that's kind of funny because sometimes in English we'll say da for the. So I guess Aramaic, we have something in common with our ancient Aramaic-speaking friends. Me doraita, from the Torah, and then min haTorah is the Hebrew. Gorgeous Torah scroll being... Is it being written? I don't know. Maybe he's pretending to write it. Maybe he's updating it. Maybe he's writing over it a second time. Anyways, beautiful copy of the Torah stretched out. Now, the oral Torah is referred to as the Torah she B'al Peh. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Speaking of oral. Torah Shebal Peh. So you can just, if you want to like to say that fast, you'll say Torah Shebal Peh. And this is, again, several like prefixes on the front of the words. So in English, this has the sense of the Torah, literally, which is on the mouth. So Torah She, that's short for asher, which. Ba is on, or in, sorry, all on Peh, the mouth. And rulings which come from the rabbis, they're called me de Rabbanan. That's the Aramaic. So me is from, da is the, remember, da, the, and then Rabbanan, so our rabbis, our teachers. So these are important technical terms for understanding different laws in the Mishnah. Now, you may have heard it said that the Jewish people don't differentiate between the written and oral Torah, or that the two are placed on the same level. Well, now you know that ain't true. Hopefully that isn't too much of a shock for you. Maybe it's even some good news. So the big takeaway here is that the Mishnah is how Israel interpreted and applied the Torah. So don't forget what the Mishnah is. That's the heart of the Mishnah right there. How Israel, how the Jewish community interpreted and applied the Torah. And your bonus takeaway in our little conversation in response to this first question about what the Mishnah is that stuff about the Jewish people clumping the oral and written Torah together, it's an urban legend. It's a bunch of urban Mishnah. All right, so let's talk about our second question in this first little discussion. What does the word Mishnah actually mean? The word Mishnah doesn't actually mean oral law. It literally means repetition. Mishnah comes from the verb shana, from which we also get the number 2, shnaim. This probably refers to how the Mishnah was originally transmitted. It was taught word of mouth and repeated, it was shanad, until it was memorized. So you can hear that. The Mishnah, the repetition, was shanad. It was repeated until it was memorized and communicated word of mouth from teacher to student through many generations. You can just imagine the Jewish teachers and their disciples sitting together and memorizing these things, repeating them, shanaing them. Now here's an example of how this word is used in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. Genesis chapter 41, verse 32. This is Joseph speaking to Pharaoh, and he says, "Now as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice." And in the Hebrew it says, ve'al, and on hishanot. So there's our verb there, shana, and it's in the form hishanot. Here's another example from Deuteronomy. It shall come about when he, that is to say the king of Israel, sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah. And if you want to look at the word for copy here with me, it is Mishneh HaTorah. All right, so it's a repetition of the Torah. It's a copy of the Torah. So if you like repetition, you're going to love these kinds of memes. So in these lessons, I definitely do make a point, and then I beat it to death with annoying repetition. Like I make a point, and then I repeat it, and then I repeat the point for you. So considering that Mishnah is related to the Hebrew word for two, remember the Hebrew word for two, shnaim, it's probably not surprising that Mishnah also means second. Here's an example of this, once again, from the book of Genesis and from one of the Joseph stories. Pharaoh had Joseph ride in his second chariot. And the Hebrew there is, so the chariot is a merkavet ha-mishneh. So the second chariot, the Mishnah chariot. You may be wondering, why? Why is the Mishnah referred to as second? Now, the preface to the Mishnah, published by Judaica Press in 1964, answers, the Mishnah is second in importance to the Torah. So, your first big takeaway is that the Hebrew word Mishnah means repetition. I repeat, it means repetition, and secondly, it means second. The second meaning is that it means second. So don't you be forgetting what Mishnah means. And the bonus takeaway is that while the Mishnah was the Jewish law that was originally communicated orally, Mishnah doesn't literally mean oral law. That's actually something of an urban mish. I mean myth. I didn't mean to say that. An urban mish. Urban Mishnah. This is starting to go to my head. So, in our next discussion, we are going to be talking about how the Mishnah was developed and why. And I do hope that you will join me for that discussion. Thanks.